"Enjoy the glaciers, Dad?" my son, Ethan, texted me. The picture attached showed him, his wife Chloe, and her mother Susan, raising champagne glasses on the deck of a massive cruise ship. The Seattle skyline glittered behind them. They thought I was back home, heartbroken, believing the cruise my dream trip saved for 2 years to honor my late wife was canceled. They lied. They stole the trip. They stole my money. They thought the old mechanic was too slow, too worn out to figure it out. But as they sailed into the icy northern waters, I was already dismantling their lives. By the time they ordered their first expensive dinner, their world had already hit an iceberg, and I was the one steering the ship. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not alone in this world. Let me back up and tell you how 40 years of sweat and loyalty ended in a betrayal that cut deeper than I ever thought possible. The smell of grease, old tires, and stale coffee. That was the smell of my life. Robert's Reliable Repairs. 40 years I'd spent under the hoods of cars, fixing things, making sure people's lives kept moving forward. My name is Robert. This cluttered, noisy garage on the edge of town was everything I had. It was my legacy. I built it after coming home from the service. It fed me and my wife, Martha. It sent my son, Ethan, to a fancy college I never could have afforded. I looked around at the tool chests, the metal worn smooth by my hands. This place was Martha's legacy too, and soon it was supposed to be Ethan's. That was the plan. But plans change. For the last 3 years, I had been easing toward retirement. I handed the management duties over to Ethan. He handled the books, the clients, the scheduling, the modern stuff. I stuck to the engines, the transmissions, the things I understood, the things that didn't lie. I trusted the mechanical world. People, I was learning, were far less reliable, and the person I trusted most was proving to be the biggest liar of all. Lately, the familiar calm of the shop was gone, replaced by a low, persistent hum of anxiety. It felt like an engine misfiring, a subtle vibration you couldn't pinpoint but knew was deeply wrong. We were busy. The bays were full from open to close, but the bank account didn't reflect it. Money was tight, uncomfortably tight. The numbers weren't adding up, and I didn't know why. But I had a sickening feeling I knew who did. I confronted Ethan last week. I found him in the waiting area, standing by the new espresso machine. It was chrome and expensive. He insisted we needed it. Client experience, Dad. He was wearing a pair of leather shoes that looked like they cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. His suit was sharp, too sharp for a garage owner. Ethan, I started, holding the latest bank statement. It felt too thin in my hand. We need to talk about the numbers. We're slammed, but the profits are down, way down. He didn't look up from his phone immediately. Tap, tap, tap. Then he sighed. "You're bothering me with details, sigh. It's the overhead, Dad," he explained, slipping the phone into his pocket. His voice was smooth, practiced. Inflation, supply chain issues. It's brutal right now. Brutal? I asked. How brutal? I need specifics. Parts are up 30%, he said, gesturing vaguely. It's hitting everyone. 30%. I nodded, accepting the explanation, but it didn't sit right in my gut. I knew the cost of parts. I'd been ordering them since the Nixon administration. 30% felt steep. It felt like an excuse. But Ethan had the spreadsheets. Ethan had the degree. I was just the old mechanic. I let it go. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But the doubt was there, rusting away at the edges of my trust. I just didn't realize how deep the corrosion went. To bridge the growing distance between us, I had booked a trip. This wasn't just a vacation. It was an Alaskan cruise. 7 days of glaciers, whales, and uninterrupted time. It was something Martha had always dreamed of. She'd kept a brochure tucked into her favorite cookbook for years. The pages were soft from her touching them, dreaming of a day we could afford. When she passed away 5 years ago, I promised myself I would go, and I would take Ethan and his wife Chloe with me. I figured it was the perfect setting to talk about the future, about responsibility, about the weight of legacy. I needed him to understand what he was inheriting. It wasn't just a building, it was a lifetime of work. I'd saved for 2 years, setting aside a little bit from every brake job and oil change. I put it into the old savings account. Martha and I shared. It was sacred money, and I was ready to spend it all on them, hoping it would bring us back together. I was a fool. I walked out of the garage bay and into the office. The office used to be my space, cluttered, messy, but functional. Now it looked like a minimalist showroom. Chrome, glass, and sleek white furniture. Chloe had insisted on redecorating. She said it projected a better image. I hated it. It felt cold, sterile, like a place where nothing real happened. Frank, my oldest friend and lead mechanic, was squinting at an invoice on the new computer system. Frank had been with me since the day I opened. He was the only person in the world I trusted completely. He still used a paper ledger as a backup. He didn't trust the computers. Maybe he was smarter than I was. Still looking forward to the great white north. Boss? Frank asked, not looking up from the screen. Next Friday, I said, pouring myself a cup of the overly complicated espresso. It tasted burnt. Can't wait to finally see a glacier. Martha would have loved it. Good for you. You deserve a break. He paused, finally looking at me, his eyes usually crinkled with humor or serious. The kid seems stressed. Ethan, he's jumpy. Jumpy, that was the word. Like he was waiting for something bad to happen. It's a lot to handle, running a business, I said, defending him. Maybe I was defending him more to myself than to Frank. He's still learning the ropes. Frank just grunted. It was a sound that meant he profoundly disagreed but knew better than to push me when it came to Ethan. Frank knew something. I could feel it, but I wasn't ready to hear it. Not yet. That evening, I had Ethan and Chloe over for dinner at my house. The house Martha had made a home. I cooked her famous pot roast. The smell filled the kitchen with memories. Comfort and pain mixed together. I was hoping the nostalgia would soften the tension between us. I was wrong. Chloe arrived first. She was striking, always impeccably dressed, bright and fiercely ambitious.
She pushed Ethan.
I admired that, but sometimes I worried she pushed him toward things that didn't matter. Status, appearances, money. Robert, the house smells divine, she said, kissing the air near my cheek. A practiced gesture, empty. She handed me a bottle of expensive wine, a little something, for the cellar. I didn't have a cellar. I put the wine on the counter. She knew I didn't have a cellar. It was a subtle jab, a reminder that my simple life wasn't enough for her standards. Ethan arrived 15 minutes later. He looked harassed. Jumpy. Sorry, Dad. Client emergency. Mrs. Gable's Lexus was making a funny noise. He barely met my eyes. His shoulders were tight. Funny noise. He sounded like he was reading from a script. I didn't realize it at the time, but he was already performing. We sat down to eat. The conversation was stilted. Chloe talked about her boutique. Ethan talked about the difficulty of finding good help. This roast is amazing, Dad, Ethan said, chewing quickly. He seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone under the table. The silence between us stretched, thin and brittle. So, the cruise, I said, deciding to get to the point. I pulled the brochure out of my pocket, laid it on the table. I finalized the booking today. I upgraded us. I waited for the excitement. The gratitude. I got something else entirely. We have the Glacier Suite, I continued, pointing to the glossy picture. 2 bedrooms, a living area, and a huge balcony. I figured we should do it right. For your mother. The room felt suddenly smaller. Ethan wouldn't look at me. He kept staring at his plate, pushing the carrots around. Chloe leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails tapping on the glossy paper. Tap, tap, tap. The air crackled with unspoken tension. They knew this was coming, and they had a plan. The Glacier Suite? Oh, Robert, that's incredible, Chloe gushed, her voice too bright. I saw that online. It must have cost a fortune. Well, a fortune? Why was it always about the cost? It's not about the money, I said, feeling a prickle of irritation. It's about honoring Martha. Ethan shifted. He shot Chloe a warning look, a silent communication passing between them. Then he turned to me, his face carefully neutral. Of course, Dad. We appreciate it, Ethan said quickly. Too quickly, but still, that's a lot of cash tied up in one trip. Tied up? I asked. It's spent. It's for us. I know, but that level of liquidity, Ethan continued, slipping into his business school jargon. The words he used when he wanted to intimidate me. It could be reinvested. We need to upgrade the diagnostic equipment. The old system is obsolete. He was trying to turn Martha's dream into a diagnostic tool. My voice tightened. We have a budget for equipment. This is separate. This is the Alaska Fund. Ethan sighed. A gesture of frustration, directed at me. I know, Dad. I'm not trying to be ungrateful, he said. But he was. We're just stressed. The shop is barely breaking even right now. It feels irresponsible to be spending so much on a vacation. Barely breaking even. The words hung in the air. Busier doesn't mean profitable, Dad, he said, his tone condescending. He made me feel small, obsolete, just like the equipment he wanted to replace. I looked at my son, and for the first time I saw a stranger. They chipped away at my excitement all night. By the time they left, the glossy brochure felt like a weight in my pocket. I washed the dishes alone. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was being a sentimental old fool. But I needed this trip. I didn't realize just how broken we already were. Monday morning, I was walking into the shop when a young woman approached me. She looked nervous, thin, with dark circles under her eyes. "Mr. Robert?" she asked, wringing her hands. "Yes? Can I help you?" "My name is Jessica," she said, looking over her shoulder toward the office, where Ethan was already working. "I used to work here. Ethan fired me last week. I vaguely remembered her. She helped with the books. Ethan said she wasn't qualified." "I'm sorry to hear that, Jessica," I said, confused. "Why are you here?" She leaned in closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I know I shouldn't be here, but I liked you and I don't like what he's doing." "What he was doing?" "Ethan," she said. "The invoices, they don't match the orders. He told me to ignore it, to just enter the numbers he gave me. When I asked too many questions, he fired me." My stomach tightened. "What invoices?" "The part suppliers," she said, her eyes darting nervously. "The charges are inflated. There are payments going to companies I can't find any records for." She looked terrified. "I have to go. He saw me. Just watch your back, Mr. Robert. He's not who you think he is." She turned and hurried away before I could ask anything else. Inflated charges, secret companies. The anxiety I felt wasn't just intuition. It was a warning. The call came on Tuesday morning, 4 days before we were supposed to set sail. I was deep in the engine bay of an old Ford F-150, Jessica's words echoing in my head. My cell phone rang. "Ethan," I wiped my greasy hands on a rag. "Hey, kid. What's up?" "Dad," he said. His voice was strained, overly formal, like he was delivering a eulogy. "Are you busy?" "Just finishing up this truck." "What's wrong?" There was a pause. A beat too long. The silence on the line felt heavy, unnatural. "I have some bad news," he said. My heart stopped. The world went silent, except for the dripping of oil onto the concrete floor. Drip, drip, drip. "What's wrong? Is it Chloe? Are you okay?" "No, everyone's fine. Health-wise. It's the cruise." "The cruise?" "It's canceled, Dad. Canceled." The word hit me like a physical blow. I leaned against the fender. The metal was cold against my arm, a wave of disappointment so heavy it almost buckled my knees. Martha's dream. Gone. Canceled. How? Why? I managed to say. Ethan sighed heavily. "A performance. It's a mess. The cruise line called me this morning. They're having massive engine trouble with the ship. The whole voyage is canceled. Engine trouble." That's terrible," I said. "I know. I'm so sorry, Dad. Chloe is devastated." He paused. "But there is a silver lining. They're issuing full refunds." A refund. All that planning, reduced back to numbers on a screen. I felt a profound sense of loss. I tried to find the positive side. "Well," I sighed. "I guess it wasn't meant to be." "You were right, Ethan. We can use the money for the shop." "Exactly," Ethan said. He sounded relieved. Too relieved. This actually might be a blessing in disguise. A blessing in disguise. His words felt hollow, cold. Did they send you the confirmation email? I asked. The refund details. I wanted to see it in writing. This is where he stumbled. Yeah, it's complicated, Ethan said. His voice got high, fast, the tone he used when he was lying. Complicated how? The email went into my spam folder, he rushed out, and I accidentally deleted it while I was clearing it out this morning. Stupid mistake. Deleted it. An email confirming thousands of dollars in refunds. Deleted. It didn't make sense. Jessica's warning flashed in my mind. He's not who you think he is, but the representative assured me, he continued, trying to recover, the money should be back in the account within 5 to 7 business days. I handled it. Okay, I said slowly. The voice in the back of my head was screaming. Okay, Ethan. I hung up. I stood there in the garage. The disappointment was sharp, bitter. But why would he lie about a canceled cruise? It didn't make sense, unless the cruise wasn't canceled at all. I tried to shake it off. I was projecting. Being paranoid, I had to believe him. He was my son, but the doubt remained, stuck like a stone in my shoe. The next day, Wednesday, I told Frank the news. He just shook his head, his expression grim. That's a shame, Robert, a real shame. His silence was loud. It was the silence of a man who knew more than he was letting on. Around noon, I was organizing invoices in the office, trying to distract myself. My cell phone rang, a number I recognized. Susan, Chloe's mother. Susan was a talkative woman, prone to gossip. I almost didn't answer. I'm glad I did. Robert, hello, darling, she chirped. Her voice was bright, too cheerful. Susan, how are you? I asked, leaning back in the sleek, uncomfortable office chair. Oh, I am wonderful, absolutely wonderful. In fact, I'm ecstatic. I'm floating on air. That's good to hear. What's the occasion? The cruise, of course, she laughed. A sound like wind chimes. I froze. The invoice in my hand slipped, fell to the floor. The air in the office suddenly felt thin, hard to breathe. The cruise? My voice was barely a whisper. Robert, I just had to call and thank you personally, she continued. When Chloe called me last night and told me what you had done, I just burst into tears. It was so incredibly generous of you. I'm sorry, Susan. I don't understand, I said, my voice tight. The cruise was canceled. Engine trouble. There was a brief, confused silence on the other end. Canceled? Oh, honey, no, Susan said. Ethan must have misspoke. Or maybe you misunderstood. My blood ran cold. The anxiety in my chest turned into a sharp, stabbing pain. I didn't misunderstand anything. They didn't cancel the whole cruise. She continued, oblivious to the bomb she had just dropped. They just said there was a scheduling conflict with your booking. Something about the suite not being available. It was confusing. A scheduling conflict, not engine trouble. The lies were unraveling. But the point is, Susan gushed, they managed to rebook it, for the same dates. In the Glacier Suite? My suite? And when Ethan told me you decided you didn't want to go anymore, she continued, because of the stress at the shop, and you insisted that I take your place, so the suite wouldn't be wasted. Well, I was just overwhelmed. Insisted I take my place. The audacity. The cruelty. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. The weight of the betrayal crushed my chest. Giving me your place. Those were Chloe's exact words, Susan said. You know, I've always wanted to see Alaska, just like Martha did. It's a dream come true. They took Martha's dream, and they gave it to Susan. The pieces clicked together. The sickening finality of a locking vault. It wasn't canceled. I was canceled. My own son, Robert, are you there, darling? Susan asked. Years in the service taught me how to control my emotions, how to assess a situation under fire,
how to compartmentalize the pain.
Focus on the objective. This was no different. This was war. I took a deep breath, forced the tremor out of my hands. I'm here, Susan, I said. My voice was dangerously calm, eerily steady. Oh, good. I was worried we got disconnected. We leave on Friday morning. I really can't thank you enough, Robert. You are a saint, A fool. I cut her off gently. Susan, don't worry about it. I paused. The words tasted like ash. Enjoy yourself. I hung up the phone. I sat in the silence of the sterile office. The betrayal over the cruise was the surface. The symptom, the disease, was something much deeper. If Ethan could lie about this so easily, so callously, what else was he lying about? The shop's finances, the missing money, Jessica's warning, the inflation. My disappointment was gone, vaporized by a cold, focused rage. He thought I was weak? He was wrong. I walked out onto the shop floor. Frank was wrestling with the transmission. Frank, I said. My voice was low. He looked up. He took one look at my face and immediately set his tools down. What's wrong, Robert? You look like you've seen a ghost. I have, I said. The ghost of the son I thought I knew. I told him about the cruise, about Susan's call, about the lie. Frank didn't look surprised. He just looked sad and angry. I knew something was off, he said, his voice rough. The numbers, Robert, they never added up. I saw him pocketing cash sometimes. I didn't want to believe it. I need your help, I said. We need to audit the books, every transaction for the last 3 years, since Ethan took over. Frank nodded slowly. Let's get to work. We spent the next 2 days tearing the business apart. I didn't go home. I slept on the old cot in the back room. The smell of oil and metal filled my nostrils. It was the only thing that felt real. Frank stayed with me, fueled by bad coffee and a growing sense of dread. We started with Frank's paper ledger, his backup, and we cross-referenced it with the computer system Ethan installed. The system I never trusted. The deeper we dug, the worse it got. It was like peeling back the layers of a rusted-out car, only to find the frame itself was rotten. It started small, discrepancies. Invoices marked as paid in the computer system, but the deposits were missing from the bank statements. Cash payments that vanished into thin air. The skimming was sloppy, amateurish, but effective. Then we found the checks, written to vendors I had never heard of. Apex Supplies, Global Parts Distribution. The companies Jessica warned me about. Who are these companies? I asked. Frank shook his head. Never heard of them. And look at the addresses. They're all P.O. boxes. Shell companies. He was writing checks to himself. The betrayal wasn't just greed. It was calculation. It was planned. If this story has your heart racing, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Every click helps us keep uncovering stories that deserve to be heard. It helps me know that I'm not just shouting into the void. Look at this. Frank's. The desk was covered in paper. He pointed to a statement from an electronics supplier. A legitimate supplier, Mike's Electronics. $7,000, Frank read out loud. Diagnostic tools. Paid 3 months ago. I stared at the entry. We haven't bought new diagnostics in over a year, Frank. I told Ethan the budget was frozen. Exactly. I picked up the phone. I called Mike. We'd done business for 20 years. Mike, Robert here. I'm reviewing my accounts. I see a charge for $7,000 3 months ago. Diagnostic system. Can you confirm the purchase? Yeah, Robert. We delivered that system back in March. Mike confirmed, his voice cheerful. Top-of-the-line model? Your son Ethan signed for it. Delivered it where, Mike? I asked. My voice was tight. I already knew the answer. To the address on the invoice, Mike said. Why? Is there a problem? I looked at the invoice. The delivery address wasn't the shop. Mike, what was the address? He read it out. It was Ethan's apartment. The expensive high-rise downtown. I hung up the phone. The realization hit me like a physical blow. He was using the business account as his personal piggy bank. The $7,000 wasn't for diagnostic tools. It was for their minimalist apartment. We kept digging. The deeper we went, the more painful it became. I found a receipt tucked into a folder of utility bills. A jewelry store downtown. $4,000. A diamond necklace. I checked the date. It matched the day Ethan claimed a major client hadn't paid their bill. The day we were short for payroll. The day Frank volunteered to wait for his check. My stomach twisted. Chloe's ambition. her desire for status. It was bleeding my business dry, and Ethan was fueling it. It was Thursday afternoon. We were exhausted. I stepped outside for some air. I saw Ethan pulling out of the parking lot in his Lexus. But he wasn't alone. A large man in a cheap suit was sitting in the passenger seat. He looked out of place, dangerous. I didn't recognize him, but the interaction looked tense. Ethan was gripping the steering wheel, his face pale. The large man was pointing at him, gesturing angrily. I walked over to Frank, who was watching them too. "Who's that?" Frank frowned. "Don't know his name, but I've seen him around." "Bad news? They say he handles collections for some people you don't want to owe money to. A loan shark." Ethan wasn't just stealing to fund Chloe's lifestyle. He was in trouble. Deep trouble. This explained the jumpiness, the stress. He wasn't just afraid of me finding out. He was afraid of him. The stakes suddenly felt higher. This wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about the danger Ethan had brought into our lives. But the betrayal still stung. He turned to criminals instead of his own father. We went back inside. It wasn't just the skimming. It wasn't just the fake vendors. It was worse. We found the loan documents. Small business loans, taken out in the shop's name. Not from the bank. From private lenders. High interest rates. "I never authorized these loans," I said, staring at the paperwork. And then I saw it. My signature. At the bottom of the documents. But it wasn't my signature. They were good, almost perfect replicas of my own handwriting. The realization that my son had spent time practicing my signature, planning to defraud me. It was a betrayal so intimate it took my breath away. Forgery, fraud, embezzlement. This wasn't a mistake. This was a systematic dismantling of everything I had built. We calculated the total amount missing. We did it 3 times, hoping we were wrong. We hadn't. $120,000. That was my retirement. That was the safety net I had built over 40 years of hard labor. That was the legacy I was supposed to leave for him. And he had stolen it. I sat back. The spreadsheets blurred in front of me. He was drowning in the consequences of his own greed and the threats of the people he borrowed from. "Robert," Frank said quietly. His voice was rough with emotion. "What are you going to do?" I looked at the picture of Martha that kept on my desk. What would she want me to do? My heart screamed to call the police, to have him arrested. He deserved it. But he was my son, Martha's son. Could I really send my own child to prison? I couldn't do it. Not yet. He thinks I'm weak, I realized out loud. He thinks I'm just an old mechanic who doesn't understand numbers. He thinks I'm a fool. The rage built again. Cold, focused. He thinks he can get away with this. I had to confront him. But not yet. Timing was everything. It was Thursday night. They were leaving tomorrow morning. Ethan, Chloe, and Susan. They were probably packing right now. Excited about the glaciers. Excited about spending my money. Celebrating their deception. I knew exactly what I had to do. I had to let them go. And then I had to cut the rope. I called my lawyer, David. An old friend. He handled the business contracts. Martha's estate. "David," I said. It was almost midnight. "I need to review the partnership agreement I drafted with Ethan. The succession plan. The succession plan. Robert, it's late. What's going on? Are you okay?" "I believe my son is stealing from the business," I said. The words tasted like bile. The silence on the line was heavy. "Tell me everything, Robert." I laid it out. The cruise. The lie. The audit. The missing $120,000. The forged loans. The loan shark. David listened patiently. "The succession plan is not yet finalized," David said, his voice sharp. "Focused. You haven't signed the final documents. He has no legal claim to the business yet. He is an employee. You have every right to terminate him and pursue legal action." "I don't want to send him to jail, David," I said, rubbing my tired eyes. "But I don't want these loan sharks coming after the shop either. Then we handle it civilly, but firmly. But first you need to secure your assets, Robert. Immediately." "How?" "You need to lock him out of everything." Friday morning arrived. The day I was supposed to be flying to Seattle, instead I was driving to the bank. The sky was clear, the sun was shining, but the world felt cold, gray. I walked into the bank, asked to see the manager. Mr. Harrison. I had known him for 20 years. Robert, good to see you, Mr. Harrison said. I heard you were supposed to be on vacation. Alaska, right? Plans changed, I said, sitting down. I need to make some immediate changes to the business accounts. And my personal accounts, with David's guidance, relayed through a discreet phone call. I systematically cut Ethan off. It was a surgical procedure, precise, emotionless. I removed him as an authorized user on the main business account. I froze the business credit cards he held. I opened a new business account, transferring all the remaining funds into it, leaving the old account empty, a dry well. Then, the personal accounts. The joint account Ethan and I still shared, the account I used for the cruise savings. I drained it, moved the funds into a new account, in my name only. As I signed the paperwork, my hand hesitated. Was I being too harsh? Was I destroying his life? But then I remembered Susan's voice, thanking me for my generosity. I remembered the forged signatures, the cold calculation. My resolve hardened. He had made his choice. I walked out of the bank feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. I had protected my business, my legacy, but I had likely destroyed my relationship with my son. I went back to the shop. Frank was waiting. It's done, I told him. How do you feel? He asked, his eyes filled with concern. Like I just buried my son. We waited. The silence in the shop was deafening. I knew what was happening. They would be boarding the ship, celebrating, ordering drinks, toasting their success. I sat in my office, watching the clock. The ship was scheduled to depart at 4 p.m. Pacific time. Around 3:30 p.m. my time, my phone buzzed. A picture message from Chloe. I opened it. My heart pounded in my chest. It was the picture I mentioned earlier, her, Ethan, and Susan. Standing on the deck, champagne glasses, beaming. The caption read, Alaska, here we come. Thank you, Robert, for the trip of a lifetime. The audacity was breathtaking. They were rubbing it in my face, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to hit them. I set the phone down and waited. 15 p.m. The ship would be pulling away from the dock. They would be settling into their rooms. They would try to register their cards for the onboard account, and the card would be declined. 45 p.m. My phone started ringing. It was Ethan. I let it ring, watching his name flash on the screen. The silence felt powerful. It stopped, then immediately started again. Ethan. I silenced the phone. A minute later, a text message. Dad, call me. Emergency. Then another. My cards aren't working. The business card and my personal card, both declined. The panic was starting. I could picture him, embarrassed, confused. Then another. What's going on? I can't access the bank accounts. Call me ASAP, hey. The messages kept coming, faster and faster. A torrent of panic, anger. He realized this wasn't a glitch. This was deliberate. This was me. Then Chloe started calling. I ignored her too. The notifications piled up. 15 missed calls, 30 missed calls, 50 missed calls. The desperation was mounting. They were trapped on a ship, miles from shore, with no access to money. A part of me felt a surge of guilt. They were stranded, but I pushed the guilt down. This was not an accident. This was a consequence. They needed to feel the weight of their choices, the isolation, the helplessness they had inflicted on me. The calls continued until the phone finally stopped ringing. They must have lost signal. I looked at the final count, 83 missed calls. I sat in the silence of the shop. The cold anger had faded, leaving only a profound, aching sadness. The cruise had indeed been canceled. Not by engine trouble, but by greed. The next week was the quietest of my life. I worked in the shop with Frank, trying to rebuild the business from the ashes of Ethan's betrayal. I changed the locks. I changed the passwords. I erased him from my life. I didn't answer the occasional calls from the ship's satellite phone. Expensive calls. Desperate calls. I listened to one voicemail from Chloe. She was sobbing, begging me to help them. Their onboard accounts were frozen. It was a humiliating experience. Public. Shameful. They had made their bed. 7 days later, they returned. I knew when the ship docked. I waited. Ethan showed up at the shop late Monday afternoon. He didn't drive his Lexus. I found out later he had to sell it to cover the immediate debts. He walked. He looked terrible. His expensive shoes were scuffed. His clothes wrinkled. His face pale and drawn. The arrogance was gone, replaced by fear. Humiliation. He walked into the office, the sterile, modern office he and Chloe had designed. He avoided my eye. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Chloe and Susan were nowhere to be seen. I heard the financial disaster had caused a massive fight. Chloe was staying with her mother. Dad, he started, his voice cracking. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, letting the silence stretch, letting the weight of his betrayal fill the room. That was cruel, he finally whispered, looking down at the floor. Stranding us like that. Cruel, I asked. My voice was calm, devoid of emotion. We had nothing, he continued, the self-pity thick in his voice. We had to borrow money from strangers. Chloe might leave me. He was still making it about himself. His suffering, cruel, I repeated. Like stealing your father's dream trip and giving it away. Cruel, like lying to me about your mother's memorial. He flinched. Cruel, like embezzling $120,000 from the business that fed you, clothed you, educated you, your whole life. Ethan flinched again, as if I had struck him. He knew I knew. The game was over. I was desperate, he pleaded. Tears welled in his eyes. I got in over my head. Chloe wanted things. The lifestyle. And the loans. He trailed off, shame finally hitting him. The loans? I prompted. The ones from the men in the cheap suits? The ones you forged my name to get? I was drowning, he sobbed. He was blaming everyone but himself. I was going to pay it back, he swore. I just needed more time. You didn't ask for time, Ethan? I said, my voice hardening. You didn't ask for help. You lied. You stole. You forged my signature. You treated me like a fool. What do you want? He cried. Do you want me arrested? Do you want to see your son in jail? I slid a thick envelope across the desk. The paperwork David had prepared, the evidence of his crimes. Inside this envelope, I said, my voice steady, is the documentation of your embezzlement. Every fake invoice. Every forged signature. Every stolen dollar. Ethan looked at the envelope with terror. You have two choices, I continued. Choice one, I take this to the police. You will be charged with multiple felonies. You will go to jail. Your future will be over. He started to sob, deep, racking sobs that shook his whole body. Choice two, I said. He looked up, a glimmer of desperate hope in his eyes. You sign the documents in front of the envelope. I pushed them forward. The documents state that you resign from Robert's Reliable Repairs, effective immediately. You relinquish any future claim to the business, any inheritance, any involvement in my life. His face went pale, and you sign a promissory note agreeing to repay the $120,000 in structured payments. Over the next 15 years, if you miss a single payment, the agreement is void, and the evidence goes to the police. Looking at his broken state, seeing the echo of the boy I raised, I felt a powerful urge to forgive him, to wipe the slate clean. But I knew that would be a mistake. Forgiveness without accountability was just permission to repeat the offense. He had to face the consequences. Ethan stared at the documents. He had lost everything. I can't, he whispered. The shop was supposed to be mine. It was my legacy. It was, I said. The word hung in the air. Heavy. Final. But you destroyed that future when you chose greed over loyalty. He picked up the pen. His hands were trembling. He looked at me one last time, searching for mercy, for a reprieve, for the fatherly love he had exploited. He found only resolve. He signed the papers. Get out, I said. Ethan stood up, stumbling toward the door. He paused at the threshold, his back to me. I'm sorry, Dad, he whispered. I truly am. I know, I said, but it's too late. He walked out of the shop and out of my life. A few months later, I sold the shop. I couldn't bear to be there anymore. The smell of grease and old tires no longer comforted me. It just reminded me of what I had lost. Frank bought it. He promised to keep the name. Robert's reliable repairs would live on, just without Robert. I retired. I had enough money to live comfortably. But the retirement I had envisioned, traveling, mentoring Ethan, being a grandfather, was gone. I moved to a small house by the lake, far from the noise, the memories. It was quiet, peaceful, alone. One afternoon, I was going through old boxes. I found the brochure Martha had kept in her cookbook. The picture of the Alaskan glacier, the ice shimmering blue in the sunlight. I held the brochure in my hands, tracing the outline of the mountains. I had never gotten to see it in person. I thought about Ethan. I hadn't spoken to him since that day in the shop. David told me that the payments were coming in regularly, every month, on time. He was working 2 jobs, trying to rebuild his life from scratch. He was struggling, but he was surviving. He was accountable. Maybe one day, years from now, we could talk again. Maybe one day, the wounds would heal enough to form a scar. But the trust, the easy comfort of father and son, the bond that I thought was unbreakable, that was gone forever. I pinned the brochure to the wall above my desk. It was a reminder of a dream deferred, and the painful, agonizing realization that the greatest betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the people you love the most. Family isn't just blood, it's trust, integrity, respect, and once broken, some things, no matter how skilled the mechanic, simply cannot be repaired. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Their support means a lot, 'cause your time matters.